Alright, welcome back. Today we're going to be going over a historical game from my collection of Shusaku Kifu. This is number 17 in the collection of about 460. There's quite a few in this massive Chinese volume that I have. And this game is interesting because it's short. Shusaku manages to land a knockout blow and force the opponent to resign before move 100. This is still from 1842, and Shusaku's still a 2-dan, and back in the 1800s in Japan, there were no amateur dan rankings, so if you were a shodan or above, you were essentially a professional player. And Shusaku is still very young. I think he's like, 11, 12 at this point in time, and to already be a 2-dan professional is very impressive, especially for the time period. So Shusaku's playing a 5-dan, and he takes black, and there was no komi back at this time, but even so, with the handicap of the 3-dan rank differential, usually there wouldn't be any sort of compensation for white. And I think these players were even alternating between a 2-stone handicap for Shusaku and playing with Shusaku as black at this point in time. So Shusaku opens in the upper right. Everything's pretty normal. This is kind of you see this a lot more in the 1800s. It's kind of like this stone says this side is whiter, and so playing on the 5-4 point limits the scope of expansion of this stone a little bit. It's, just a strategy that was in vogue at the time. Shusaku just encloses the corner. And you'll notice we have a split opening. This became a lot less common from the mid-1900s with the introduction of komi into professional play, because the thinking is that if we have a split opening with the players taking opposite diagonal corners, you're going to have a lot more small groups and small territories, whereas if we just go back and each player does something on their own side, and if this just sort of develops along these lines, you see each side is building really big territories. So for example, in this case, the score might be 60 to 70 at the end of the game, because both players have really large areas. Whereas maybe with a split opening in the style that was played, maybe the score is, 30 to 35. That would be half of the previous scores that I'd mentioned. And so if the score is 30 to 35, the thinking is, and this is just a theory, this isn't, set in stone, is that the komi of 5.5 or 6.5 points is going to be relatively more valuable if there's a lot of small territories and it's a low-scoring game. Whereas if both players have big territories and it's a high-scoring game, that same 5.5 percent komi, or 5.5 point komi, is a relatively smaller proportion of the final score. So the thinking is, since it's really black's option to have a counter opening, cross opening like this, or to stay on one side, that it's slightly better for black to, not play a cross opening if there's komi involved. And it's just one way of thinking. It's not absolute. You'll see professionals occasionally play cross openings, so it's not 100%. Maybe you have a fighting style and you don't like big frameworks, and so you're more comfortable playing a split opening, in which case, play a split opening. Play the game that you want to play. Now, white approaches. This is, again, pretty common to approach at the time instead of enclosing one's own corners. So black actually ignores this and does the same down in the lower right. We have a very simple joseki that comes out here, and black can follow up by jumping out to here or one line lower to establish a bigger position on the side, but if black does this right now, white can just come and press this down really easily, and here we can see that this stone is not working well because white's out ahead over here. And even if black jumps out, this stone is low, and there's not very much potential on the right side. So black is happy to just take the corner, or probably take the corner. White could come back and play S2, but, black establishes a group in this corner one way or another, and then jumps over here. So black is playing very quickly, trying to develop very fast. And here, this black approach makes perfect sense because it's acting as an extension from this two-stone Shamari enclosure facing up the left side. So this is kind of going all the way as far as you possibly can, trying to get the absolute most out of this enclosure by, because it would also be feasible to just extend here, you know, or actually probably one line further, because then if white comes here, there's room for a two-space extension. Whereas if white plays a large knight's enclosure to make this a little narrow, then there's still scope to invade inside this framework. But black doesn't do that. Black approaches all the way, and white pincers, which is an option. One thing that you'll notice is in this type of situation, this is where jumping out, you know, might make sense, because you can come back to counterattack this one stone. It would be one option for black. If there were a white Shamari down here, jumping out and then pincering wouldn't make sense because you'd be jumping into a strong white area. But since there's this black backup over here, black could potentially start a running fight with this one stone. But instead, black counter pincers on the top fairly loosely, and this is kind of to break any potential connection between the D17 and P17 stone. So white's going to do something really natural, which is kick to keep black from sliding into the corner. Black will extend to keep white from getting to the tiger's mouth, which would be really good for white. It would work really well with this far pincer to just dominate the stone so well. And then white comes out to split the two black groups. This is pretty straightforward, you know. You can't really go wrong in a situation by grabbing a base and splitting your opponent's two groups. That's good fundamental go playing right there. Black jumps away very lightly to pressure this stone. And again, notice how, like, if there were a white formation down here, this would not be putting very much pressure on this white stone. But with the black enclosure down here, now if black pincers with this sort of cap, it's going to be really hard for white to handle the one stone on the left. So white just makes a two-space extension, which also keeps this black group attackable. Because if this stone becomes really weak, it's hard to attack when you yourself are really weak. So white's going to strengthen himself so he can continue to attack. And then black does the same thing up here, because he doesn't want to have two weak groups sitting right next to each other. So white defends, black defends. Everything's fairly honest so far. And then white hits here to make sure that the connection to the outside is good, because we see now with this backup, you know, if white, you know, does something over here, this looks like it's sealing the corner, so white doesn't want the corner to get sealed in. Does this shoulder hit right here, and then black responds by taking advantage of the thinness of the two white stones by playing a shoulder hit of his own. White resists, but this works okay for black because black essentially gets to reinforce this group pretty well. Like, this is, you know, this connection is very solid now between these two stones and these three stones. And white does something interesting here. White doesn't really want to push at F11 because black is ahead and black is getting into the center first. You don't want to push from behind. So if you find yourself in this situation, you might want to consider doing a knight's jump or doing a one-space jump, you know, to try and get out ahead of black's group. But unfortunately, the aji of this stone back here is too much. So if white does this, we can see immediately that this cut is connecting to this stone right away. And yes, it doesn't, like, immediately work. Like, you know, white can play this and black stones will be captured. But the leftover aji of this situation is really troublesome. And also, too, that, you know, black can consider trying things like jumping down here or pushing down like this to separate the stone. There's just a lot of, you know, remaining aji. So white pushes once from behind, which, like I said, is not good, you know, in the local sense between these four white stones and these four black stones. This is good for black. But now it allows white to come back, and instead of having to connect submissively on the third line underneath this black forcing stone, now white can come up. And you'll also notice that if white tries to come up before this first push here, if white comes up right now, black has some really, for example, one thing black could do is jump to here. And now if white does like a wedge or something, you know, Tari, And yeah, like we can see here that this black wall is now dominating the outside. This black group is in no danger, and white captured 1 stone and made like 4 points of territory. So this would be an excellent result for black. And there might be better ways for white to resist, but basically, white coming out here would be an overplay without this first additional push. So we see here, white doing this to create a better overall situation. Because now if black tries to come down like this, white just panes on top, and it's not really a problem. If black tries to push like this, white can just resist directly without having to worry as much about the cut. So, interesting strategy by white to sort of take a local loss right here to get the better result with the c8 and d8 stones. Black kind of comes into the corner, and white pushes here, which gives white a base on top instead of in the corner, and does damage this group quite a bit to come down like this. But black forces once here, and black could come back and connect, but black is playing really fast this game. And the other thing is that this lets black come into the corner and get a solid base for this group, and even though it's out into the center, it's always nice to get a base and take some territory. And in this case, white has to come back and get his own base by capturing the G18 stone. Black Ataris once, and now you see there's sort of a problem. Black could connect here to remove this weakness, but now, just really simply, even if white does something really basic like this 1-point jump, we can see that these black stones are not really that much stronger than these white stones, so there's kind of a even fight on the board. And this is kind of heavy. It's kind of tying black to defending these 4 stones no matter what. And black is playing fast, so instead of trying to defend this over here, black's going to be like, okay, these 2 are forcing moves. White is going to have to come through here, and then I've got Ataris and a bunch of other forcing moves that I can do, which makes this stone not particularly weak. If this stone were just next to this white Panuki and these 2 black stones weren't there, this stone would be weak. But with these 2 forcing moves, these stones are probably not going to survive, but if white tries to do something here, this stone has room to maneuver pretty easily. So black is going to kick and turn to attack this stone. And this is a really interesting move, because we notice how when white kicked over here, white didn't play the knight's move, white played e16. So the attacking shape was these 3 stones, and this, connection got played later. But here, black is going a little further. Black is playing faster. And from the perspective of attacking and getting ahead, this knight's move is definitely better than the diagonal move. But it leaves behind a really big weakness, and that weakness is at A. So if you want to look at this move in your own game, like kick and jump out with the knight's move, the first thing you have to look at is what happens if white attaches at A. And if you can handle that attachment, if you've got enough stones in the area, or it's, not quite working with the local situation, then you can definitely play this move. But if this attachment at A causes you some problems, you should definitely stick back to the diagonal move right here, or just jumping is even safer, because now if white ignores this to, come back and play something, now this cap is really harsh. Like, this is a very strong attack on these stones. So these are all options that one has in this shape, and equally so if we move this over and our initial stone was on the 4-4 point and we were kicking a knight's approach to a 4-4, you could potentially consider, playing this knight's move if this attachment doesn't cause you problems. And you also have to look, if this were 1 line over, what would happen when white invades the 3-3 point if you play the knight's move. But it's an option. It's an option that you have. So white jumps out, shoulder hitting the 1 stone, which is good. White's moving out, putting pressure on the weaker side here. Black's jumping away, and this is just really good attacking style. We say attack with the knight's move, and black's just jumping out and keeping this group behind enemy lines. You can see, now between the K15 and Q14 stone, white is potentially going to be enclosed if black gets another move around here. So white jumps out, and then black plays this point, because if black just jumps out, which does, tie, these groups together and make his position fairly strong, white descending here, this group basically has a base now. You know, like, black doesn't have one move to seal it in. If it comes here, white can probably still attach here. If the attachment doesn't work, then the diagonal move, or maybe this attachment works. You know, there's still scope for white to escape, and white's looking like there's a base here, especially with these forcing moves against this one stone. So, in order to keep white weak, and this also does a lot to strengthen these upper side stones, because now if black comes back and attaches, or not attaches, connects here, then there's more scope to make a base on top. So now white activates this Aji, and if you didn't read out some of this, which I understand if you're listening to the commentary instead of pausing the video and reading out every random continuation that catches your eye, you can see right now that this is causing a difficult situation. You know, black can't Hane here, it's just not quite working. You know, depending on the stones over in this area and the stones over here, but these three stones are weak. So the fact that these stones are weak, white might be able to handle this. Now, when white Hanes here, it's really important because, you know, if black does something over here and white does this, black's down to 2 liberties, and this is getting really dire. I think black would probably just lose the corner in this variation and just get a few stones on the outside. Totally unacceptable. So black comes down, and now white offers kind of like there's an option for black to back down here. Black can capture this stone. White might just play this Atari and then jump up. These stones become weak. Black gets the corner, gets some of this, gets Sente to decide, well, do I want to try and come out? Do I want to just sacrifice the 3 stones? You know, what exactly do I want to do here? So this would be a way, but white's getting a pretty good situation here. Even though there is Aji in these stones, there's not really, you know, if you've read out the alternatives and there's something you can live with, this is pretty easy going on white, to just take the 1 stone and live in the corner and let white get the outside. So, first of all, black says, I want the outside. This is kind of an interesting move. I think even at this point, black has read out what's going to happen in the corner, and has kind of said, you know, that's okay. I'm okay with potentially losing the corner if I get a good shape on the outside. So already from this point, black has started looking at the outside as more important. And you can tell because, you know, black's not trying to live back here or play a Hane on the inside. Black's saying, hey, you know, I want to break up the shape that you have on the outside. White comes in, black plays over here, which is again focusing on building up this shape on the outside. So now you see, if black comes back and captures this 1 stone now to live in the corner, that white doesn't have a way to capture these 3 stones anymore with these 2 forcing moves. So white has to kind of go for the corner now to get compensation. So white connects here, and then black cuts here, which is definitely the strongest move. This is kind of going all out because, you know, basically white needs to capture these 4 black stones in the corner now. There's really no way to make this work otherwise. So white Hanes, black plays R18, which looks weird, but it actually is the best way to get the most liberties, because now you're threatening to either live over here or make at least 1 eye over here, which will be good in the capturing race. White comes in, which is necessary to prevent black from living. Black gets 1 eye. And now white plays another move in here to, you know, make sure that these stones don't have very many liberties. And black plays this to make it a co-shape for that last liberty. White comes down, black connects. White connects, which is necessary to come down here and start the ko. Black plays a forcing move on the outside. And I guess this is not strictly forcing, but black plays another move on the outside, is rather what I should say. And then white plays here to initiate this, this ko, to capture this black group up on the upper right. This is a forcing move, which is made possible by the move at N16 that was played previously. White has to connect. And now black doesn't even start say, hey, we're going to have to fight this ko. Doesn't even worry about it. So this is what I meant when I said earlier that black has already read out that this ko is going to happen. And notice that it's, a multi-move ko for black. Like, these white stones have 3 liberties on the outside. This white group has 3 liberties on the outside. So, if white responds here and black decides to start the ko and plays here, white captures, black has to make a ko threat somewhere. Let's just play down here. White responds, black captures. Then if white makes a ko threat somewhere, black has to ignore it to put this in Atari. White recaptures, so black has to win this ko twice. And this is, when you have to win a ko twice to fill up liberties or for whatever reason, it's called an approach move ko. And it's really difficult because in order to win, you've got to give your opponent 2 ko threats that go unanswered, rather than just 1. So it's possible, in fact, beyond even possible, it's likely that if black really decides that I'm going to win this ko no matter what, black will lose more on the outside than black gains from the ko. But, like I said, black is ignoring the ko situation to play elsewhere on the board, so black's perspective is like, listen, that aji is there. White has to play more moves to get rid of that ko aji. I'm okay with that. That aji is part of my compensation. At some point, I'll get something for it, but I'm not going to worry about it right now. There's bigger points on the rest of the board. And if we go back and look at this whole sequence where white decides to capture these cornerstones, from right here, I think, if black just captures this 1 stone to keep the corner alive, and white gets the outside and these 3 stones, that's obviously a pretty good result for white. If we just go back, black captures, and we look at this, yeah, these stones aren't dead yet, but they're very weak. White's got pretty good shape with both of his groups. The corner's not terribly big. This is a working variation for white. Now, though, when black plays out here, white answers. Black plays this move. White plays on the inside. Black plays this move. White plays on the inside. Black has to respond to that one. White plays another move on the inside just to capture. Black plays this. And then this right here is the 3rd move that white plays on the inside. Black gets another move out there. And then white plays this. So we can see that all of these moves, I guess there's just 3, strictly speaking, but black gets 3 moves on the outside, while white connected, and then pushed in. So, when this is really not, this looks like a good capture for white, because there's a lot of black stones, but it's actually not super, super big. And when we realized that black was getting moves 1, 2, and 3 in exchange for 4, 5, and 6 from white, it's looking really slow for white to come and capture these stones, because white still has to win a ko and still has to capture the stones to end the whole situation, which would be 2 more moves, which would be 5 moves on the inside to capture just a few stones over here. So black just continues making good shape on the outside. This is forcing directly because it puts the stone in Atari. And then just plays over here, saying, okay, at some point you're going to have to worry about this approach move ko, but for right now, let's not really worry about it. White responds once, black comes up. Oh, sorry, that's the variation. Black comes up, and then white turns and captures the stone, threatening to just capture this and call it good. And the reason is that, this Hane at 1 is not as brutal with the 2 stones. It's a little easier for white to handle. So white responds once, but then when black responds again, white goes back to the ko situation, and now black continues to just play on the outside, saying, yeah, now we can add the stone at R1 right here. Let's actually go to the labels. The stone at A, black was able to exchange, or actually it's the other way around. Black essentially exchanged A for B. B is on the inside, killing stones that were essentially already dead from black's perspective, whereas we can see the A stone is doing quite a lot. I mean, now, like, these two white groups on the bottom are in a lot of trouble. So, you know, the group over at C and the group at D, neither one has eye shape, neither one has a base. The A group is directly between them and really strong with this extra extension. So black's strategy of sacrificing the cornerstones to develop the outside has been really successful so far. Now, white plays here, this is kind of tricky because this is reducing white's liberties right here. So I think white figures this is okay since white's only one move from resolving the ko, and this does allow white to try and get out a little bit. Because if these stones, you know, can get out and get some, you know, access to the outside, that helps white's overall position quite a bit. But now that white's reduced the liberty by one, now black comes back and restarts the ko. Because notice now that just A and B are free liberties for white. So beforehand, the point at C was also a liberty. So white had 3 liberties that black would have had to fill. But now there's only the 2. So for a co-threat, white plays here because this is working because, you know, if black tries to extend here to put the stones in Atari, white just captures. And now black, in order to continue fighting the ko, would have to play over here, but then white just captures, and this destroys black's shape on the outside. So this is not acceptable for black. So black just connects here, and now white could come back and capture this one stone, which would give these stones, you know, 2 eyes. Black could come here, do this, and then either extend or ladder the stone. It might be better to just ladder the stone. It's a matter of style, you know, which one you want to do. But this does firmly capture. Actually, can this? Oh no, we can't do a net because white can come back and do this. Although I suppose this might not be too bad. This would be another option if you didn't want to give white the ladder break. But black just connects, and then white connects here. And, you know, white's idea is that, okay, now if we go into the real ko, I'll just do this, ignore anything that black plays, and capture, because now my group has access to the outside, which is much, much better than the previous situation. But black has a plan, and black caps here. And this move is actually so strong that white resigns upon seeing this move. Or probably white thought really hard for a long time, and then realized that the situation is just kind of hopeless. So the question is, why is this move so strong that it causes white to resign? First of all, it's really hard for this bottom group right here to live in this space. We could try maybe doing something kind of like coming out if black blocks. Now we come down here, but if black comes here, you know, it's just looking, oh, can we even live down here? And the answer is maybe. Oh, I really don't know. This is looking kind of sketchy for white. But the thing is that this variation doesn't actually matter, because if white does try something like trying to come out here, what will happen is black will start the ko. White will have to capture. And now, if white resolves the ko, this is obviously dead. Okay? So, because of the ko situation on top, there's no way. Alternatively, what could happen is when black goes to start the ko, white could come out here, black would capture, and this is obviously just devastating for white, because now this white group over here is also captured. Black basically takes a quarter of the board. This is a complete collapse for white. So white is essentially either going to lose the upper right corner or lose the lower right corner. And if we go back and look at how much territory white is actually getting on top, remember, white is going to have to remove these from the board, essentially. So white's going to have to play at R19 and Q18. Although I guess at this point, white could just play back here to capture the one stone. Now, but even then, black can play here to keep the ko going. So white's going to have to capture these, which means only these points where there are black stones is white's territory up here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 times 2, that's 18 points up here. And then if we go ahead and count these on the side, there's essentially 2 here, that would be 20 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's say 25 points up in this corner. But look at this lower right corner. You know, just counting from here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. You know, this is, over 30 points down here. So this is actually bigger. And, if white does decide to save this, black's capture in the upper right is much more devastating because these two white groups are a lot more points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I mean, this is also like 36 points that black will get up here. And since white can't save both of these situations, black is going to get more than white regardless. And then notice that, too, on the rest of the board, really favors black. Like, in this situation, the black stone here is 1 point further out than white, which is really nullifying any potential influence that white would have here. And same thing down here. Black is 1 point further out. These two stones are very weak. White needs another move somewhere to get some sort of base for this group. It's hard to say whether there or going one line further would be better in this situation. So white has no real potential anywhere on the board to get more territory, and white only has a few points on the left and a few points up here, whereas black's got territory here. This corner is going to be pretty good, especially when you consider that as it stands, if white plays, something like this, black can do this to secure the corner territory, and this is pretty big. So we're looking at a situation where black is like, 30 points ahead on the board already, no matter what white does. So I think white kind of overplayed this one cut. Like I said, if we go back to the beginning, the question is, or not the beginning, but when this fight started. And the question when black plays, this knight's jump here is, can black handle this white cross attachment and cut? And in this case, the answer is yes, although it's a little bit surprising because black, at this point, I think has already decided to sacrifice the corner. That the outside is more important. The corner's less than 20 points total, maybe slightly over 20 if we count a few points on the right side. But these stones in the corner are less than 20 points, and that getting really good development on the outside. Like, see, so look, black plays this move, white plays on the inside. Black plays this move, white plays on the inside. Well, black's playing on the inside here too, so let's not count these. But then white has to connect here. Does black play on the inside? No! Black plays on the outside. So that's the second move that white had to play on the inside that black answered on the outside. There's another move on the inside that black answers on the outside, and this is forcing, but then black also gets this to attack the lower side. So when we think that black gave up, the stones at A, but got to play B, C, and D on the outside in exchange, if you're giving up, we would usually think of a move in the opening as being worth maybe between 10 and 15 points, depending on what point in the opening it is. And even if we're down to like 7-point moves at this point, playing these 3 moves on the outside, if they're worth 7 points apiece, just as a ballpark figure off the top of my head, and giving up 18 points, we can see that black's getting an advantage. But I think that the moves on the outside are worth quite a bit more than that overall. I notice that white still has to come back to deal with the Koaji. So black just handles this whole fight really well, and white is forced to kind of really inefficiently capture these 8 stones. And 8 stones is big, but it's not the whole board. And just the way that black played really fast in this game and showed just superb whole board judgment in this fight, coming through and just delivering this knockout blow right here of this cap and forcing white to resign. And white's a 5-don, so this is pretty impressive to take a game just to move 89 and force your opponent to resign. It's pretty amazing. And it's just cool how well black used the potential in the corner and then switched gears and focused on the outside, and it kind of made white spend all these moves to go and capture it. It's just I thought it was a really neat example of using whole board judgment. So that was another game, and that is all for this time, and thank you for watching.